Hello everyone and welcome to Wine List Live. So welcome to your January tasting. So this is the Wine List tasting live. So we're tasting our January box and the two wines that we have to taste are our Gavi and on the other side we have our Merle as well. So these are the two that come in our core box in January. We get two different ones every month and this month's are so if you haven't been to Wine List Live YouTube tastings before, welcome. I hope you enjoy it. If you have been before, welcome back. I'm Isabelle, I'm head of wine at the Wine List, and you may remember me from such things as last December's box tasting. So what we'll be doing tonight is we'll go through our Gavi. So we'll pour it out, we'll chat about our Gavi, we'll break it down. So we're going to look at our tasting cards. So they look like this if you haven't seen them before. So if you have one in front of you, we'll go through it. If you don't have it in front of you, it's no problem because we'll just be breaking it down and chatting about it anyway. I'm not making you do too much hard work because I know that you've already had a very long day at work. So we'll go through our Gavi and then we'll go through our red wine, our lovely Merle, and then we'll break that down too. So if you can see in the very side of you, you should be able to see and hear me okay, and you can comment in that little box. You can comment and say hello, see if you can, everyone's okay, everyone can see me okay, wonderful. You can say hello in the box, you can tell me what you think about the wine as well because I'm desperate to know, and you can also shout out any of the answers that we have. So we'll be going through what are tasting notes, so you can put everything in there. So let's pull the Gavi out. So this one is a Marchesi Spinola Gavi, and if you want to pour some out into your glass, I am very lucky because you might recognise these, but I have the brand new Wine List glasses. So if you bought your 6 bottles this month and you got your 6 glasses free, they are lovely glasses, and I also got a box of them because they're wonderful. And they go in the dishwasher, so I'm obsessed with them, so much easier. And they're perfect for our wines. So what you want to do is, if your glass is shaped similar to this, pour your wine to the widest point on your glass. Pour it up to there. I mean, when we're in a restaurant and in bars, we like to pour it to the top so that we don't have to go up to the bar and get another glass. But now you're at home, you can just keep topping it up with your bottle. You should have your bottle right next to you, so it should be absolutely fine. So, hello to everyone in the comments. Lovely to see you all. Welcome to January tasting. I'm so glad that you're not doing dry January because it's probably the worst time of year to do dry January. Sorry to anyone who is. So you have your wine poured to the widest point in your glass. What that's doing is it's opening up. You've got the biggest surface area of wine touching your air, and that means that all those wonderful aromas are drifting up off your glass and doing wonders for the wine. They're all being trapped inside here, those aromas. So what it's doing is it's just helping us to smell our wine. It's making it a bit easier for us. So anyone that's just joining, we're doing our Gavi wine first. And if you have been before, there might be a few things that you'll have heard last time. But if it's your first time, we'll go through the basics as well, just so you're caught up to speed. And if you have heard them before and you've remembered what they are, very well done, because it means you're learning and you're being amazing at wine. Hello to Anne in the comments and everyone else, and Nina and Chris. Wonderful to see you all. So, our Marchesi Spinola Gavi. What is Gavi? So whenever you look at a bottle, especially bottles from Europe, they're the worst for it. They're such a nightmare. But they'll have the name on the front that's a very recognisable name, and you always question yourself, is this the grape or is it the region? So with Gavi, even though we always refer to it as Gavi, it is actually the region, which is so confusing because we always just call it Gavi. Nowhere on this bottle does it say the grape variety, which makes it very confusing. So the grape variety in Gavi is always Cortese. Cortese is an Italian grape and it's called Cortese di Gavi to give it the full name, which means it's just Cortese from the town of Gavi. So when you hear people talking about Gavi di Gavi, that basically means it is Cortese grape variety. It's from Gavi, the town, and it's from the closest part to the town. So I'll show you a little map that I have up here. So we're looking at Italy basically, and Italy looks like a shoe, looks like a boot. And if you look at the very, very top there, you've got Rome in the middle, and the top of your little boot is Gavi. And Gavi is in Piedmont region in Italy. So Piedmont means the foot of the mountain. And that's because you can see at the top of Italy, that's where it borders sort of France and Switzerland. That's where all the Alps are. So it's really, really hilly, mountainous. But then what happens is the Alps start to become a little bit less Alpy, and it slowly goes down to the ocean, and that's just where you find Gavi. It's just caught between the two. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. I'll take my map away if everyone's seen enough of my map. It's in official wineless colours as well. So it's creating its own microclimate here. So when you have mountains on this side and you have the sea down here and Gavi caught between the two, what the sea is doing is it's keeping it temperate. It's giving you cooling sea breezes. It means that it's not too hot in summer or too cold in winter. It's keeping it just nice and temperate. And that's exactly what happens in England when you think about it. We're completely surrounded by the ocean, well, the sea, the English Channel. When I say England, I do mean the whole of the UK. But because it's all surrounded by water, a big body of water, it means that it's a really temperate climate. So it never gets too cold in winter, even though it does feel it this week. And it never gets too hot in summer. Lovely and in between. And this is what happens in the north of Italy. It keeps it nice and temperate, that lovely Mediterranean Ocean. Well, Mediterranean Sea, sorry. I'm trying to make it bigger than it is, because it's such a big deal. So the mountains on the other side are also doing exactly the same. They're giving it cooling influences. There's lots of winds. It's sort of like when you're in a big city and there's lots of skyscrapers everywhere, and winds get trapped in between the buildings, and it makes it really, really windy. That's why they called Chicago the Windy City. And that happens with mountains as well. Winds get trapped between them, so you're getting loads of cooling winds coming down from the Alpine mountains, meeting with that sort of cooling sea breeze, and you're just getting this wonderful climate of sea breezes and Alpine breezes. It's gorgeous. It's very, very pretty as well. So it's being cooled down, but it's also a really, really hot area in summer. So it has the capacity to make the grapes really, really ripen up and become absolutely wonderful. So in Gavi, the town, so we have Piedmont. We'll break it down a bit more. Okay, we've done the overall thing. Hi everyone to everyone who's saying hi in the comments. God, it's such a friendly bunch that we have here. This is so nice. So in northern Italy, in Piedmont, that is the big region. Then you go closer, you go smaller than that region, and you suddenly have the province of Alessandria. Province of Alessandria, basically, the Cortese grape grown inside there is called Gavi. It's basically a smaller region where they can call that Gavi. You can get Cortese in other places, but it's very, very rare. You'll get Cortese, there's a few in Australia, not very many. And you don't really grow it anywhere else in Italy, really. It's usually only seen in that very small area, which makes it very famous. And it means that they can really look after what their wines taste like. So when you taste a Gavi, it tastes like a Gavi because it's from that same tiny region. So the province of Alessandria, then at the very centre of that province, you have the town of Gavi itself. So when you have Gavi, it's from the province, the whole region, and when you have Gavi di Gavi, it means it's Gavi from Gavi town centre. It's not quite the town centre, they're not growing it in sort of their window boxes. It just means it's within a couple of kilometres from Gavi town centre, so it's getting really, really close to where everything's happening. So there's not much difference in quality in terms of whether it's just Gavi or Gavi di Gavi. It's not like when you have some places, especially in France, and it's the closer you get to the actual place, like going closest to Château de Pape makes it a better wine usually. So it's more sort of exactly where your Gavi is growing, basically, if that all makes sense. So in Gavi, you also have villages surrounding that whole town. One of those villages is called Tassarolo. So you can have Gavi di Tassarolo, which is exactly what we've got here. So you can see on the front it says Gavi, The hardest part about wines sometimes is actually just reading the label to figure out what you're actually going to drink. So, Gavi, from below it says from the commune of Tassarolo, so basically means it's from the Tassarolo village, which is a very lovely place. So a few people in the comments are saying that this is their first ever Gavi. I'm so excited for you. You're going to love Gavis. They are, as soon as you taste them, you just know it's going to be a Gavi. That's it, straight away. And Nina has tried the Waitrose one last year and liked it. The Waitrose, we actually just put it in our email that we sent out the other day. We tried a couple of Waitrose Gavis, and there's one which is about, I think it's about £13, and it is wonderful as well. Love a Gavi. I've never met anyone who doesn't like a Gavi, so try and prove me wrong. I actually don't, because I really want you to like it. So, shall I let you sip it anyway? I don't want to hold you back. Shall we all cheers and toast? Here's to 2021 and our first tasting of 2021. How exciting. Cheers, everyone. Cling. Oh, that is a wonderful Gavi. So, when we're talking about our village of Tassarolo, it is this whole area, because Piedmont is so beautiful. There is wonderful, wonderful things going on in Gavi. So, this is the castle where this place comes from. The castle of the Spinola family. So, the Spinola family are basically this ancient noble family that have been going for generations. And the newest Spinolas, I mean, this is how fancy their castle is. That's like a drawing of their castle. And this is their wine tasting room. How fancy is that? It's absolutely wonderful. I did go a bit crazy with pictures this afternoon because they just have a whole album and I could not help myself, and you will see why. So this is Massimiliana. She is the owner of the vineyard, and she's a very, very cool lady because she has a degree in art, worked in contemporary art in New York and in London, and then just decided to go back and live on her family's castle and make amazing, amazing wines. What a lady. She's wonderful. So Massimiliana, she inherited this castle and vineyard from her father, who inherited it from generations and generations before then, way back to sort of 1400. And she really cares about her vineyard. So what happened was she came back to take over this vineyard and found that the grapes weren't really thriving. The land just looked a little bit dead. Everything was just looking a bit limp and malnourished. So what happened was that she decided to ask for lots of advice, and she decided to go completely biodynamic and organic, farm really sustainably inside her vineyard. And she found that her fields and crops and just the whole farm started to come back to life. It really sort of looked nourished and healthy and wonderful. So one thing she started doing is, we touched on this in our last tasting, but I've got pictures of this time. So she has a horse and cart instead of tractors. So in part of her sustainable farming and sort of biodynamic organic practices, using horse and carts is really good. So there's a few things that you have to do to make it properly biodynamic and organic. And you follow cycles of moon cycles in order to know when to plant, when to prune, when to harvest. So it's following the natural moon cycle rather than a made up month cycle and dates like us humans made up. So it's really sort of listening to the earth. They also do things like they take the earth, bury it inside a cow horn, and they take a cow horn and bury that inside the earth and use that as fertilizer on the field in years to come. So there's loads of things going on to do with that. And they also use horses, the picture I just showed you. And the reason is, when you drive a tractor over your vineyard, it really, really presses down on the earth, and it means that earthworms can't live inside that soil, and it means they can't break the soil down. So the soil becomes really, really compact, and the compact soil, it can't absorb water very well. The roots can't go down to the water very well either. So when you use a horse and cart, they're much, much lighter on their feet, and it means that you get wonderful soil and wonderful earthworms, and everything is nature is living underneath and thriving and doing very well. In return, from doing all these wonderful organic, biodynamic and sustainable practices, it means that you get great grapes coming out of it. So these grapes really reflect the vineyard itself. They really show what the vineyard can give to it. It's sort of working in unison with each other. So when you taste this wine, have a little sip now. Can you tell this is a sort of low intervention natural wine just from tasting it? Ooh, I can just tell it's delicious. So when you talk about natural wines which have very low intervention, we always think of these sort of weird, bizarre, cloudy wines that have a lot of things going on and are quite unusual for wines. But this just shows that you can create a really, really beautiful wine that can have absolutely no sulfites added to it, but it doesn't change the flavour of it in any way. It's keeping really pure to that sort of Gavi style that you can get. So it's a really, really great wine. You'd never be able to tell there's anything being done differently to it. And somehow they can make no change inside this wine, but it has very little sulfites inside it. So sulfites is basically a preservative that happens, it exists naturally inside wines, but as a very, very small amount, but you add sulfites to wines in order to preserve them. Because if you think about it, wine is just grape juice in a bottle, and if you leave sort of grape juice in your fridge or any sort of orange juice, it will start to change and it will start to go off. And with wine, once you seal it up, people might not drink that wine for a year, a couple of years, sometimes even longer. So you want to make sure that your wine is going to stay exactly in the same condition. So when you have many fruit juices, they will add sulfites to those fruit juices to preserve them. Lots of foods that you have from the supermarket also have preservatives inside them, the same sulfites. But this wine, they didn't add any to them because they worked so hard at keeping the wine in the perfect state. So they're really overly cleaning every single barrel, all the winery, all the machinery, and they keep it really, it's very difficult to do it basically. It's almost questioning how on earth do they do it, but they don't add many sulfites. They don't add any sulfites at all. There's just a tiny bit that exists naturally. Otherwise, it's completely, nearly sulfite free. So Ruth has asked if sulfites impact the hangover. They do not. So we will always get a hangover anyway because we are just drinking a lot of wine and a lot of alcohol. But with sulfites, there are some people who are allergic to sulfites, and that means that it can give you a headache or it can give you a rash. Usually if people are allergic to sulfites, they know they're allergic to sulfites because they'll also be allergic to not just wine, but many other sort of fresh food products that you buy in the supermarket, like fruit juices and everything like that. So it doesn't actually affect your hangover, but makes a really clean wine. It doesn't change anything in the flavour. You wouldn't be able to tell if a wine had less sulfites just from tasting it. But it's just it's the way that Massimiliana has made her wine. She's wanted to have as little intervention as possible to show what the grape can do in its natural state. She doesn't want to add any chemicals to it. She wants to keep it completely clean. And that choice is basically a very similar choice as to whether we have organic food or non-organic food. So if your bread is from organic wheat or you have organic bananas, it's just a choice that you want to add fewer chemicals inside the things that we consume every day. If you consume wine every day, which most of us do. So, the Spinola family. I thought I'd also show you this. So this wine that we're drinking, Massimiliana, because she has a degree in art and worked in art, you can see on this label how beautiful the label is. She's put so much work into that. And this wine is loved by some celebrities, which I will show you now. So this one is, you will notice, it's Prince Charles drinking their wines in 2011, and they actually won some prizes for their wine. So Prince Charles absolutely loved it, I reckon. Well, he did. Don't know if he got a hangover from it, but I will guess he did. So also back to the sulfites, Natasha has asked if it means it will last it won't last as long as wines with sulfites in it. So wines with sulfites are made so they don't change at all and they will last a long time. Usually when you have big brands, they'll put sulfites in it because it means that they'll have a smaller, because they're making so many bottles, they'll have a smaller percentage of bottles that will have gone off or gone faulty. But they look after this so well that it should be okay for most people's bottles, almost all of them. It will last just as long. If it didn't last as long, they would add sulfites to it, basically. They did a lot of experiments. It took them absolutely years to make sure that they could go completely sulfite free before they really committed to it, because otherwise they'll just have loads of people sending bottles back to them and they won't make any sales. It'll be terrible. So Fiona at the Wine List is saying that this tastes amazing with green pesto and pasta. Yes, I'm so glad you're having that. Pesto and pasta is perfect with this wine. So because you have, in Piedmont, that is exactly where they invented pesto. It's where pesto comes from, all those fresh green herbs. And whenever you have a region speciality dish, the speciality wine from that region also matches wonderfully well. It happens in almost every region. It's perfect. I don't know how they do it. So if ever in doubt with your food pairing, look at what the local food is and the local wine is, and they will go really nicely together. So Emily is saying, is it the cleaning of the barrels that means it doesn't taste funky? So, no, not quite. So the funkiness that you get in some natural wines is done on purpose. So they might purposefully add a fault in the wine. So they might, or different bacteria. So you can either have different bacteria going in to give it a bit of funkiness. You can have a fault in it, so you can put a little bit extra oxygen inside to oxygenate it a bit more, which can make it taste really funky. There's loads of different things going on to make it taste funky. Don't think about it from the cleaning perspective. Wines, when they're being made, are still very clean. These are just super clean. These are like incredibly clinically clean. So don't worry, it's not like bin flavours that's adding to your wine. That'd be so gross. Oh, everyone's saying Granny Smith apple. Lovely, lovely, lovely. So, what does your Gavi taste like? Tell me in the comments, what's it tasting like? Everyone's saying green Granny Smith apple so far, which I completely agree with. It's wonderful. Can anyone taste some minerality inside this wine? Any minerality? So that basically means, does it taste sort of stony and steely? And I know those are really weird flavours because we think, what does stone and steel taste like? But for some reason, we always know what stone and steel taste like because we've all licked a metal spoon. Sometimes they taste a bit metallic. The old ones, the not very nice ones. So Nick and Jess have asked, what does funky mean? And funky is, it's not really a technical phrase, but funky is when people say it a lot about natural wines. So not all natural wines are funky in flavour, but funky in flavour means when you sort of, it tastes like sourdough, or it tastes really sort of earthy and like mocha. It's when it has the weirder flavours coming out of it, when it's not just sort of green apples and fresh fruit. It's when it's getting a bit bizarre. You sort of have the normal flavours, then you have the complex flavours. We'll go over this in a minute. And then you get the funky flavours when you have a bit of an odd wine. That's all that funky means. Anne is saying stone fruit, apricots, pears and elderflower. Helen's saying wet stones. Ellen agrees on the apple. Emily is saying saltiness. Yes, definitely saltiness. And this comes to my next point. Thank you so much for leading me on to this point, Emily. Gavi is sometimes described as the Chablis of Italy. So if you've had a Chablis before, it's Chardonnay grape variety, it's from France, and it's wonderful, it's so delicious. Everyone loves a Chablis. It's like one of those go-to easy drinking wines that are just wonderful, full of minerality Chablis. So the soils, the reason why Chablis is so delicious and full of minerality is because the soils below it, the roots soak up all that minerality flavour and it adds to the wine, makes it minerally. This happens in Gavi as well. So over in Gavi, we have some really similar soils going on underneath. Not quite the same, we're not taking it as extreme this time. That's why it feels a bit softer and easier. but you'll be getting loads of minerality inside this wine. The roots are soaking up all that flavour from the wonderful soil, mineral rich soil, and it makes it really, really good. So people are saying apple, bruised apple. That basically means when an apple feels a bit warmer, a bit softer, a bit less sort of Granny Smith and a bit more warm, juicy, vibrant. And tropical fruit as well, yes. Natasha said, a bit like a Chablis, but much fuller. Absolutely, I agree. Chablis are like the clean, cutting through like a knife. This one's just like a little bit soft rounded, and they're doing a little bit extra, so it's getting more fun. What we'll do is we will start breaking this down in our tasting card, and then we can really get our heads around it, figure out what's going on inside the wine, and look at all those flavours and why those flavours are in there as well. So if you look at your first thing on your tasting card, it's the characteristics at the top. And the characteristics are really easy. You can the first one's colour. It's a white wine, quite easy. But when we're looking at colour, we're looking at whether it's very sort of clear and watery in colour, or whether it's going all the way up to sort of very yellow and sort of amber in colour. Where do you think this one is? So in my light it looks very, very pale, but so do I in this light, and it's not just because it's January. This wine actually does have quite a nice bit of yellow to it. It's definitely not going full on butter golden, but it's definitely that lovely hint of lemon. It's definitely got more colour to a Chablis, and it should have more colour to a Chablis because it's had a bit of oak aging. And it's from a sunnier climate as well, and it's a different grape, so it's getting a bit more than that. Can everyone see that it is a little bit lemon in colour? Still pretty light, but it's a bit of lemon. So what I've put is I've gone a quarter of the way up on this one. Lovely bit of colour there, you can tell something's going on, but it's still clean, crisp white wine. So we can cross out tannin because white wine does not have any tannin inside it. Tannin basically comes from skins, grape skins, so if it's had contact with the grape skins, it'll have tannin, but white wine does not have that, so we'll cross it out. And then the acidity inside this wine. So we've already talked about how similar it is to a Chablis. It's soaking up the minerality, it feels like a Chablis, but then the acidity feels like a Chablis as well. So if you want to test your acidity, what you do is you do the dribble test. You take a sip of wine. I will do it. You take a sip of wine and then you swallow it, and what you can do is tilt your head forward with your mouth open and count how many seconds it takes you before you have to close your mouth, before you dribble all over yourself. So you can try it now. You ready? Three. Did anyone get any advances on 3? That was pretty fast. So Anna, James and Patrick are first-time YouTube tasters but long-time drinkers. Lovely guys. Welcome. Should we do a cheers to you? Welcome. And I hope everyone else is cheersing to them at home. Welcome. So 3 seconds before I had to shut my mouth before I was going to dribble all down myself and embarrass myself loads. So that means it's pretty high acidity. If your mouth waters straight away and you couldn't even open your mouth because you were just going to be Niagara Falls whooshing out of your mouth, that means that it's incredibly high acidity. We're going way up on the scale on that one. Natasha is around the same point as me, 2 seconds. 2-3 seconds before we had to close our mouth. That means it's pretty high acidity. It's making your mouth water lots, and what we love from high acidity is it means that it feels refreshing. When the acid is reacting with all of your taste buds, it's making your mouth think it's making your head think your mouth is full of water, so it puts on the waterworks, flushes out all the acid, and that's why your mouth waters so much, it's whooshing down. So Emily's saying that her boyfriend accidentally dribbles on himself when he does this test. That's fine for you guys because we don't have cameras on, we're not doing a Zoom tasting today. It's no problem. We're not watching, you can dribble on yourself, that's absolutely fine. But she agrees. 3 seconds, Fiona's 2, Barbara's 3 to 4. Wonderful. Pretty high acidity, making our mouth water, feeling fresh. If we go back to our little microclimate in Gavi here, this is why it has really high acidity. So Cortese as a grape usually gives a high acidity wine, But this wine is getting a little extra oomph because it's in Gavi region. You get cooler nighttime temperatures and hotter daytime temperatures. So we call this diurnal range, and diurnal range basically means what's the difference between your nighttime temperature and your daytime temperature. So if there's a little difference, your grape can't really refresh itself at nighttime before it gets really hot again in the daytime. But if you have a big difference, your grape really cools way down at nighttime before it gets really hot again in the daytime. But it means it's had that rest at nighttime, so it takes a while for it to get back up to temperature at that sort of lunchtime sun. This means that because your grape is resting really nicely, it has a high diurnal range, and a high diurnal range gives great acidity. You want that temperature difference, you want your grape to rest at night time. It's like it's getting a good night's sleep, and it feels refreshing and full of acidity. So that's why we get all that acidity. So the next one that we'll look at is sweetness. And sweetness is a bit confusing sometimes. We like to talk about it as sugar rather than sweetness. So it's how much sugar is actually present inside your wine. If it's less than 17 grams of sugar per litre, it means that it's completely dry, which is what this one is, but it can be confusing because, as we're saying in our comments, all these comments are all fruit flavours, so tropical fruit, lots of citrus, grapefruit, the sort of orchard fruit, the apples and stuff, and the stone fruits, peaches and apricots. These are all really sweet smells, so when we're smelling these and we're tasting these, it can be confusing because our brain thinks, are we actually tasting the sugar, or is it just a slight smell that reminds us of that smell, of those sweet things? So it's completely dry wine, but it does smell of a lot of lovely juicy fruits. Can be confusing. So the next one after this is body, and you will know this from our last tasting if you were here, but our body is, we can think about it in glasses of milk. So if you've got 2 glasses of milk in front of you, and if one is skimmed milk and one is full fat milk, that is the difference between body in wine. So if it's like a light bodied wine, it's like skimmed milk, it's clean, it cuts through. And if it's full-bodied wine, it'll feel like full fat milk, and it'll sit really rich, rounded and heavy on your palate. So when you're drinking this one, someone's mentioned it in comments earlier, but where does this one sit? Is it completely clean like water? Does it just slip down very easily? Or is there something going on there? What do you think? Can you feel a little bit of weight? Imagine, you always have to think about parameters with this. So imagine the sort of lightest body wine you can possibly think of. Imagine a really sort of young, easy Pinot Grigio that you get on holiday at lunchtime. It's just basically alcoholic water. That's a super light bodied wine. When you go all the way up, you're thinking of like Chardonnays with lots of oak aging when they're feeling very creamy and they're sitting heavy like butter. So Natasha is already saying medium minus. So just a little bit below medium. Does everyone else agree? You're going to have to type really quickly. Oh yeah, we're here. Semi-skimmed. Clean, quite light. I agree with you, Barbara. It's clean, but what you might want to do actually, this will make it easier, warm your glass of wine up a bit. I don't mean in the microwave or anything, just you can do it in your hand, it's very easy. Just want to warm it up by a couple of degrees, and that helps us to smell more aromas in wine, and it helps us to feel that body a bit more. So when your wine is in the fridge, it's a little bit too cold. Our fridge temperature is usually about 5 degrees. That's a bit too cold for wine. This wine you can probably take up to between 7 and 10 degrees, this one. And you'll feel some more of that body. So if it's a little bit cold now, you might not notice that body, but the warmer it goes, just hold it in your hands for a bit. Keep it by the fire in your nice warm room. And it means that you can feel more of the body, you can taste more flavours in there as well. We'll get to that afterwards. So I think this is sort of like semi-skimmed milk. Semi-skimmed, just a little bit lower. Semi-skimmed with a dash of water inside, just a dash. Can you feel that richness going on inside this wine? So it's not just clean and easy. It feels clean and fresh from that acidity, but it has something going on. It has a little bit of weight and a bit of depth there. Definitely sort of medium-y. Then the finish on this one. So finish indicates quality of wine. If you have a really short finish, so if you taste it and the flavour suddenly disappears off your palate, it means that it's not a very good quality wine. The longer that finish goes, it means the better quality wine it is. It means that the grapes have really been looked after when they've been turned into wine. So if you have a really long finish, if you can taste that wine for up to sort of 10 seconds, way after you've had that last sip, it means it's a really long finish. So where are you with finish? How many seconds? You can literally just take a sip. We'll take a sip now and we'll start counting how many seconds. Oh, and Alex in the comments saying very similar to the Chenin Blanc, like a South Africa one. Absolutely. Yeah, if you like this, get a South African Chenin Blanc. They feel full and they have that bit of weightiness. Wonderful. Similar flavours too. Bit less minerality sometimes. Depends where you are. But how long was that finish? I got to about 8. It was somewhere between 8 and 9 seconds, sort of 8.5, 9. That was a really long finish. Did everyone notice that? Yeah, Natasha can still taste it from the very beginning, which was about 30 minutes ago. Really, really long, this wine. Super, super long. Very long finish. Oh, wonderful. Yeah, 10 plus, 7 seconds, 8 seconds. It's a very long finish with this wine. So, the aromas that we're going to look at. We'll do the same tasting card with our red as well. And but when we're looking at the aromas, what happens is the aromas on the left-hand side circle are usually fruit aromas. They're coming from the grape itself, so all your wines will have something from here. If it's a very extra special wine, if a winemaker chooses to do something to the wine, it gets into this second circle on the right-hand side where it gets more complex, a bit more interesting, a bit more depth and weirdness behind it. When we're talking about funky flavours, these are complex. When you get funky, it's sort of this plus a bit more. Going past it a bit. It's where it's not just toast, it's going like sourdough toast. So, aromas, what can you get? We've already been through a lot of the fruit ones, but we said before elderflower, apple, lemon, lime, peach, apricot, lychee, orange blossom, kiwi, honey, we'll add those on, chamomile. The main question, did anyone get any flavours from the second circle? So the second circle is when it starts to get weird, when it starts to get complex. And when you age a Gavi is known for tasting of that wonderful, bright, fresh citrus, minerality, clean, tastes like a summer holiday wine, an Italian summer holiday. But Gavis are known for a specific taste when they start to age. So if they're aged a little bit longer, if they have a bit of barrel aging as well, they will start to taste like almonds. Can you taste almonds inside this wine? Emily is saying, oh yeah, you do have some weird ones here. Kumquat, starfruit, creme fraiche, hazelnut, salt, minerality and apple. Oh, that is lovely. You know what, if you mix all those ingredients together, I reckon that would taste like a really nice sort of summer fruit salad. It'd be very lovely. Nick and Jess, wet wool in caps lock. Wet wool. Let me smell it. Yeah, I get what you mean. A bit wet woolly. Like a woolly jumper. Can anyone get that almond? Yes, almond, green almonds. It's definitely there, that sort of nutty aroma. Again, if your wine isn't warm enough, warm it up a little bit and you'll definitely get the almonds coming out of it. And the last thing we could do is a little verdict on the very top. So in this top right hand corner, you can put your verdict. And then you can always go back to your tasting cards afterwards and say, God, yeah, I love a Gavi. So this one is at the top here and it's a very big smiley face from me. I will be pouring a very large glass of that and drinking it all to myself. What's everyone else's opinion on the Gavi? Let me know. And for those who had the Gavi for the first time, did you enjoy it? It's going to be great for, it's just our 2021 wine. I'm just going to drink Gavi every single day. It's just easy. It's wonderful and amazing. It's so good. And if you enjoyed that Gavi, what we can do is we can get extra ones. So we have our surplus store that is live on our website and it has extra wines there. So if you liked the Gavi from tonight, you can pop to the surplus store and pop yourself another bottle straight away ready for this weekend. It'd be wonderful. So, shall we move on to Le Merle? So our red wine. This one, can you see it, is Le Merle. So Le Merle is it's a French red wine. It's from Provence in France. And Le Merle, as you can see on the very front, it means a blackbird. So can you see the blackbird here? Le Merle is named after a lovely blackbird. It's basically a beautiful countryside in France. So if we look at our map of France, it is in the very, very south. So Paris is at the top. And then that southern area is Provence. And Provence is known for sort of wonderful olive groves, lovely sort of summer holidays. I can't stop mentioning summer holidays today. And wonderful beaches as well. And Château Pas de Cerf is sort of trapped between the two. So it's between the olive groves and the beach at the very south of France. What I love about the south of France and their wines is that historically they've always been known as the slightly poorer area in France. And that means that they haven't had the same reputation as Bordeaux and Champagne and Burgundy and all these really sort of well-known places. And because they all have such a big reputation, it means that they charge lots for their wine. Their land is really expensive up there, and it's really expensive to make wine in those regions. When you get to the south in Provence, the very, very south is a little bit lesser well known. So they don't have to follow so many rules that you have to follow in sort of Bordeaux and Burgundy. And it means that winemakers can do something a little bit different. They can do what they want to, and it sometimes means that you can get a really great quality wine for half the price sometimes of a Burgundy for the same price. So, Emily says that Pas de Cerf means footprint of the deer. Ooh. Means footprint of the deer, but it also means deer crossing. Emily, I'm guessing from your name you are French. Oh yeah, it has a double meaning. So Pas de Cerf, it goes back to the old-fashioned meaning of the Pas de Cerf, and it goes back to 1533 when King Francois he called it the deer's crossing, because it was something about him hunting in the woodland at the chateau itself, and then he killed a deer. And they named it after that. But yeah, that was in 1533. So that's what the chateau's named after. And it was King Francois I in France. And he was like the Henry VIII of France. He was like the cool king. He's called the good King Francois. And he also means, he was like the hot king as well, the king that everyone fancied. So Andrew's just asked if he should cleanse his glass before the red. No problem, Andrew. Pour that red straight in. So because we go from a white wine to a red wine, it means that you can use exactly the same glass. You can save up on your washing up, and it won't affect the flavours. Usually, in a tasting, you start with the lighter wine and move on to the heavier wine, so that doesn't disrupt your palate. If you start with a heavy one and move to the lighter one, you won't be able to taste those really delicate flavours. If you go from the same white to red in your glass, you can also do the same thing, it's no problem. Oh, Emily is French. My mum's French, so I'm Team France. That's why I love this wine so much, because it's from France. I am biased, I won't lie. So, what grape varieties are in here? Well, we have 3 different ones. It is a blend. So we have Syrah, Grenache, and Carignan. So those 3 grape varieties are, can you guess where they're well known? They are really well known in Rhone Valley. So if anyone's had a Rhone Valley wine, if you've had a Côte de Rhône before, any sort of Rhone Valley wine, they've got a mixture of lots of grape varieties that they can use. And the main ones are Syrah and Grenache. And sometimes they add in a little bit of something extra going on. Today it's Carignan. So Rhone Valley is in the north, well, it's not in the north, it's in the south, but it's just further north of Provence, basically. And, oh, sorry, we're just doing a... Anna asks, is my dad Irish? Is that from my surname? Yes, Irish great-grandfather. I'm just going to get all the European passports at the moment, that's what we're going for. So we have Provence here, and then we have Rhone Valley just above it. And what they do in Provence, as we just said, they like to take grape varieties from other places in France and make their own sort of wines without having to follow all the rules from the rest of France. So you can often see Rhone Valley blends made in Provence, and this is what we have here. So Syrah is a really well-known grape variety. Syrah is, it's the same as Shiraz. It's exactly the same grape variety. It's just different languages. So in France they call it Syrah. In Australia they call it Shiraz. And if it says Syrah or Shiraz on your bottle, it basically means, have they made it in the Australian style where it's a bit sort of full of fruit and spice, or have they made it in the French and Italian style where it's full of minerality and it's a bit earthier? So you can start to taste this wine and sort of ask yourself, oh, is it more sort of French and Italian style Syrah or Australian style Syrah? What do you think? Do you think it's fruity and spicy, or do you think it's minerality and earthy? Have a little think about this. So the next grape that we have, so we've got our Syrah. Syrah is basically a wonderful sort of full velvety grape. It can do wonderful things. It can age really well. Then we have Grenache. And Grenache is Grenache in French, Garnature in Spain, and Grenache is in everything, but we always forget about Grenache. So Grenache is famous in Côte d'Or wines, it's famous in Provence, it's famous in Barossa, also Syrah. But it's famous in Australia. They use it all over the world. They use it in America, and they use it in Spain in Rioja. So Grenache is this wonderful, soft, juicy grape variety. It's sort of like smoothing over the edges of grapes sometimes when they're a bit sort of spiky and harsh and full of tannin. Softens them out, makes them feel plump and wonderful to drink. So the third grape variety that they've added is Carignan. And Carignan is not very well known when we think about it. When we start to name the famous grape varieties, we think about Merlot, we think about Malbec. We never think about Carignan, but in France it used to be the most grown grape variety in France, Carignan. It was the grape to drink. And then suddenly in the 20th century, everyone started ripping out their Carignan, replacing it with Merlot, and that's why we don't really know much about Carignan these days. So Carignan, it can be a wonderful grape. It's really, really tricky to grow though. It can add a lot of rough tannins, and it ripens really late, which means it needs a really hot climate to survive, which is what we've got here. So the south of France is super, super hot. Really, really long, hot, dry summers. And they've amped it up a little bit more in this vineyard with their soil variety. So it's basically making the vineyard hotter. So it's already hot, but then it's making the soil and the earth underneath the vine hot. So it's acting like a hot plate. And it's really, really doing wonders for that Carignan. It's really sort of making it ripe and juicy and wonderful. It's adding to this wine. So, shall we have a smell? Everyone's saying it smells amazing. It does smell amazing, it's wonderful. And I think I've had my wine out for a while and it's smelling even better this one. It's really opening up, it's staying in that glass. So, shall I show you a little picture of this vineyard as well? Just before we break it down. So it's in Provence and it is the Giuliettieri family. So they've passed this vineyard down in their family for generations and generations, and it's always passed through women. So it's the lady at the very bottom and her 3 daughters, and they're all winemakers. And that's wonderful Provence on the side because it's beautiful and very, very nice. So let's look at what they made. Let's break it down. Should we do a cheers of this one as well? Cheers everyone, cheers. Oh, fresh. That wine feels so different to many Côte d'Or. Even though it's similar grape varieties, made in the same way, it's only a bit further south, but it feels different. It feels like it's got more minerality. You can almost feel how close it is to the sea. You're less in the mountains and the Alps in Côte d'Or, and you're more sort of Provence, by the ocean, with all the olive groves. And this vineyard actually grows next to a field that has fennel. Oh no, it's not fennel. No, it is fennel, and it's sort of, they plant lots of wildflowers. They have forests nearby. You can taste that sort of wildness in the wine. It's really coming through. It's almost like the fennel is sort of drifting into it and scenting our wine. So we'll break it down and we can look at the colour. It's red, but what shade of red is it? Is it ruby red? Is it purple? Is it brownish? Is it clear, or is it going really intense and being sort of opaque in colour? How much can you see through your wine? So I'd say what you want to do is the best thing to do, especially for red wine, is to hold it over a piece of paper. So you're holding it at a 45-degree angle over your paper like this. And that's the best way to look at the colour of your wine, really. So you can see exactly what it is against pure bright white. And this one it's not quite ruby red. It's going a little bit more of like a cloudy tinge to it, but it's definitely not too opaque. I'd say it's that sort of middling halfway. Everything about it is middling. You can kind of see through it. It's not quite bright ruby in colour. It's definitely going a bit further up than that. But yeah, middle way on this one. So, the tannins in this one, how much is it drying your mouth out? Is it really juicy, easy, or is it feeling really dry when you drink it? Is it coating the tongue and the sides of your mouth and the roof of your mouth as well? So, where do you think? Have a sip. How does it feel on your palate? Emily's saying, yeah, quite dark, not completely opaque. But yeah, you can see the aging on the side. Exactly that. That's exactly what we're looking at in our wine. Sort of in the middle of that. In the middle of colour somewhere. It looks like a wonderful colour. It's not extreme on either side though. So tannin in this one is, oh Alex, how much Syrah is in this blend? Ooh, I don't have my percentages written down in front of me, but I will find out and I will send you an email. So yeah, everyone agrees not too tannins. This is a really easygoing, soft wine. So it's not really harsh. Sometimes when you have a really high tannin wine, it's really difficult to drink. It's wonderful with food because tannin and food sort of soften each other out. But it's a little bit too much to just sit and drink. This one is nice and easy drinking. Medium and a little bit less on the tannin. So acidity on this one. We want our acidity and our tannin to balance up so that they feel easy drinking. If you have all that tannin with no acidity, it's difficult to drink. But if you have lots of tannin and lots of acidity, it's a really, really nice drink. So where's the acidity? We sometimes forget it on our red wines, but have a sip, swallow it, and do your dribble test again. See how much you're dribbling on yourself. Hopefully it's not too much. But is everyone sort of medium on that as well? So our tannin and our acidity on this one balance out really nicely. They're both medium on this one. They don't have to balance perfectly to make a wine good, but it makes, the more balanced they are, the more easy drinking the wine is, the more you can just sit on a sofa and just sip away with this one. Exactly what Jay Hill said. We drink this in a pub for hours. Yes, exactly that. A party wine and a hangover wine. I think that's the best description of a wine I've ever had. Anne says it smells fruity like an Aussie, but tastes more minerality. Yes, so when we were talking about our Syrah earlier, we were talking about whether it feels like an Australian Syrah or a French Syrah. It's definitely more minerality. It has that sort of light freshness to it. So, 3s on the dribble test. Wonderful. Yeah, medium acidity on the... That's actually quite, yeah. 5 seconds, 6 seconds, yeah, that's more like it. I was going to say, that's quite high, 3 seconds. Maybe a bit less than that. Maybe you're just mouth watering just at the sight of wine. Could just be that. So our next one is sweetness, and again, it's how much sugar is inside your wine. Is there actual sugar in this, or does it just smell like sweet, sweet, wonderful fruits? It is a completely dry wine again. Very little residual sugar inside this one. Again, most wines that we drink these days, because it is fashionable, most wines are dry. Sort of our palates are adjusted to dry wines, so you don't really go out and buy sweet wines usually, although I do love them. And then body with this one, so we can think about our glasses of milk again. Does it feel like skimmed milk, or does it feel like full fat milk? It is easier to tell with a red wine. You can almost just look at the wine, and from that colour we were looking at before, how opaque is it? If it was really, really light, it usually means it's lighter in body. If it is completely opaque, it usually means it's really full in body. And because this is sort of in between, it makes us think it's probably going to be in between on body, but we still want to taste it to make sure that that's right. And I think that is right. I think it is quite in between. Maybe a bit less than that. I feel like our minerality just lifts it up again. That nice lift, so it's definitely not a full-bodied wine, this one. It feels really fresh. That's why it felt so different to a Côte d'Aron. It feels like a fresh wine. It's so concentrated in flavour, and then when you drink it, it's easy going and wonderful. It'll be so good with food, this wine. If anyone's having food pairings with it, let me know how it'll go. I've put that ratatouille and that like a nice beef stew would go. You basically want like hearty meals with a nice sort of fresh wine, like balancing each other out, not going full hearty with both of them. You want to balance that out nicely, like a seesaw. So then the finish on this one, how long is that finish? The last one that we had was incredibly, incredibly long. It was 8 or 9 seconds. Super, super long. It basically never left. It's like that guest at the party who just won't leave. What is this one like? Have a sip, swallow it, and start counting. Should we do it now? I'm about 7 seconds on that one. I'm like 7 seconds, disappointing. In comparison to that Gavi, I mean 7 seconds is still amazing in length, it's wonderful. But that Gavi was so long, such a long finish. This time, let's go to our aromas, but we'll focus more on our fruit aromas first. So when we're looking at our fruit aromas, we'll start with the left-hand side circle. We'll start with the aromas that we always know we're going to get. And when we're looking at red wines, before we were getting mainly aromas on that right-hand side of the circle, but now we'll look mainly at aromas on the left of the left-hand circle, the very, very left of this page, basically. Those are usually the aromas you find inside a red wine. So what are you getting out of this? Everyone's saying sort of similar in length, sort of between 6 and 8, so around the 7 point. Yeah, definitely. Nice long length, some nice long length wines. And you want a long finish on wine because it goes really well with food. You can still taste that wine on your palate as you're eating food, and the two complement each other and just make each other even better and even more wonderful and amazing. So, is anyone getting black cherry inside this wine? Fresh berries, black currant, plum, red currant. You can tick loads of these off on this side. So that's the fruits. You can type away. If you're writing long comments, it might take you longer to type it. Just type really fast. Then we have our main fruit flavours, and we can ask ourselves, has the winemaker done something to this wine to make it a bit complex, to move into that second circle? I'll let you type the comments first, but I'll just chat about quality wines. So when you have a good quality wine, it needs to tick 4 boxes. One of those is finish. So if it has a long finish, it means it's been really well looked after. And we've had long finishes in both of them. Nice. The second one is balance. So it's just, do all the elements, all the characteristics balance out with each other? Do the flavours balance out with each of those characteristics? So acidity, body, tannin, flavour, do they all feel balanced and nice? Our next one is depth of flavour. And depth of flavour is basically how many flavours have we written down. If we struggle to write 3, it means it's not got much depth of flavour. It's quite tricky. But if you start to write down flavours and you keep writing, you get to sort of 5, 6, 7, maybe even 10, 15 flavours. Not quite 15, sometimes. That means it's got loads of depth. And if you have complexity, the fourth one, it means you're going into that second circle, which hopefully we have some of in this wine, because we had a bit of it in the last wine as well. So Alex is saying cherry, red currant, strawberry. Emily is saying, oh no, sorry, not Emily. Emily's boyfriend is saying chocolate digestive biscuit. I see why you put in that your boyfriend said that and not yourself, because that is a bit of a weird flavour. Should I smell it? Hang on. I'll tell you what, I did have this with a chocolate bar earlier. It's a cocoa bar. And it went very, very nicely with it. This with chocolate, if anyone's finished their dinner and want to move on to a nice little snack, try this wine with a bit of chocolate. Be very, very nice. Ooh, maybe not quite chocolate digestive, But actually, no, I put bitter chocolate down. Yeah, as long as you're saying like dark chocolate, digestive. Yeah, dark chocolate, bitter chocolate. Anne is saying pepper. Yes, very, very peppery. Bit of pepper over there with J Hills as well. Ruth says jam. And jam's coming from that really hot climate. So the hotter your climate is, the less fresh your fruits taste, the more sort of jammy and almost baked your fruits taste. So you can tell it's that hot Provence country. Ooh, taste. Oh, it smells more fruity than it tastes. Blackcurrant and saline. Ooh, cedar, barnyard, licorice, medicinal and pepper. Wonderful. Yeah, spot on. Definitely a cedar. Can everyone taste that? Well, smell it more than taste it, but it's a sort of, it's a woody aroma. It's a bit piney, cedar, foresty. And again, it's going back to growing in those sort of, where the vineyard is, with a fennel field on one side and a forest on the other side. It's almost picking up all those smells and those aromas. It's wonderful. And Alex has put white pepper, specifically white and not black. I've put specifically black, but you can have both. Throw both in, it's very, very peppery. I put spicy, and I spelt spicy wrong, but it's really spicy, this wine. When you have it, it's almost like you're grinding black pepper onto your food. This is why this wine goes so well with food. We have our fruit elements and we're going over into the sort of savoury spice, things that go nice with food. When you have a wine that is really fruit forward without any of the savoury quality, it can sometimes clash with food. So if you have like a really fruity Sauvignon Blanc full of sort of passion fruit, it can clash with the food that you're eating sometimes. You have to match it really well and choose your food wisely. So like passion fruit with a chicken salad would be very nice. Passion fruit with a steak would be very wrong. This wine with a steak would be very nice because it has that savoury element, that pepper, spice, dried herbs, if you can smell the dried herbs, things like thyme, sage, fennel. Those are things that are matching really, really nicely with food. Fiona, cherries, blackcurrant, plum and raisins. Yes, all on a farm. Yes, it's like a farmer's basket full of their berries for the afternoon. And yeah, we're all saying spicy. J Hills is having it with chocolate and it's going really nicely. Yes, I'm so glad you're doing a chocolate pairing. Chocolate and red wine is wonderful. So what we can do, I think you've got everything on my list, and I put pine twice because I really thought it and really meant it. So what we can do is we can do our verdict again. So this time with this wine, I also have, guess what, another manic smile like usual because I love them. So which was your favourite between the two wines? Was it the Gavi with that wonderful sort of bit of body going on behind there and our low sulfite? Or was it the Merle, the red wine? Alex is having, are you having turkey legs or chocolate with it? I'm not really sure what you're having. Either would go very nicely. So which is your favourite between the two? Was it the Gavi or was it the red wine? Everyone is getting on to the chocolate with the red wine. I'm so glad you're doing this. It'll be wonderful. It's what we need in January, chocolate and red wine. It'll be lovely. So Ruth is voting Gavi. Okay, we've got one vote Gavi. I'm going to go Gavi. Yeah. My decision was based on what do I want to drink a massive glass of first. And I'm going to go Gavi. We've got another Gavi. Everyone's going Gavi. I'm so glad. But I'm so glad you enjoyed it. Gavi. Oh God, everyone's going for Gavi. And usually people always forget about white wines in January. We always just go straight to those sort of full-bodied red wines. It's so nice to have something refreshing and light and invigorating on a January. You need something crisp, fresh. So these two wines are really sort of kicking us into the new year. God, everyone is saying Gavi. You know what? I'm going to change my vote and go for the red now because I still love the red. Oh no, we've got another vote for the red. Okay, nice. Yes, it is showing a lot of Syrah. I'm gonna find out for you what the exact split is between the Syrah, Grenache and Carignan. We'll figure it out. Find out those percentages. Do some calculations and some maths. I'll just Google it. But yeah, we'll find out which one those are. But I'm so glad that everyone is saying Gavi. Yes. Yeah, we all love the Merle, but I mean the Gavi was a real standout. It was absolutely wonderful, and we're all obsessed with Massimiliana because she's a wonderful lady. That's why I love the Gavi so much. So a whole 6 bottles that Emily has had in one evening. I'm going to finish a comment off. She had them all tonight. Wow, Emily, that's a lot of wine for one night for 2 people. But well done. I'm so glad. So let me know in emails, in Instagram comments, in comments on YouTube, what has been your favourite wine. What did you like about each wine and what did you not like about each wine? That's the most important thing sometimes with wine, so that you don't have to have a wine like that again if you don't like a bit of it. So what you can do is, if you liked both of those wines, and I'm assuming it's going to be the Gavi that's going to win out of this, but you can go onto our surplus store, you can buy some extra bottles of those Gavi, stock up so that you have about 15,000 of them for summer, because that's what we need. But thank you so much for everyone who came to the tasting. Let us know if you like our videos. We also have some more videos coming up. But thank you so much for everyone for coming. I have been Isabelle. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and I'm going to pour myself a massive glass of the Gavi now to finish off with. But thank you very much. Love to all, and take care. Bye, everyone.